9 of Late Night Linux, recorded on the 14th of March 2022. I'm Joe, and with me are Phelim.
Howdy.
Graham.
Hello.
And Will.
Hello.
Let's get straight into our discoveries then. Phelim. Aha! What's this?
Take on... No. It is a very cool thing that I discovered from last week's project in KDE to do the FUPD output. This can convert colorized text output from, say, a diff or whatever, or color diff rather, those ASCII escape sequences. It can convert that into HTML, which is brilliant.
Oh, yeah.
And very handy because I use this in my own project for doing diffs and then turn it into a HTML page with this ropey Python thing that I did. And it's horrible. And had I known that this existed, it would have saved me a lot of grief, to be quite honest, and probably improper code. So this is fantastic. I love it. And I also, while I was rooting around, I discovered on the GitHub page what the KDE control panel item does, and I was able to run it against my own machine with this horrific FUP manager command going through AHA, then a whole load of sed nightmare into a HTML page, and discovered that I do have a TPM v2, but my kernel is tainted. So yeah, there you go.
That's excellent. I'm just looking at the man page, and the echo command for htop output into AHA looks brilliant. So you could have a real-time HTML htop output.
Get a load of that.
Yeah.
That is indeed the command.
And what's this about blaming Canada then?
I read quite a good article, I don't know, I think it was on Hacker News at some point, but it was one of those ones that, these long reads that you discover while you're sitting idly doing nothing for 10 to 15 minutes. And it's how Canada or someone in the Canadian government sent a magnetic tape to IBM Watson's Research Centre. And the Canadian Parliament records things for Quebec in French, and then various government agencies, they call the translation department, I think, they translate it into English and vice versa, and they call this the Hansard document or tape or whatever. But this is essentially years of recorded French and English data that IBM looked at and went, we always sort of work on translations by doing a like-for-like translation, or, but what if we statistically analyze it a bit like, I guess, deciphering text? And that's what they did. And then they worked out, the frequency of various ways of doing things, and they finally worked out how to do machine translation. So it's all Canada's fault that Google Translate has destroyed all linguistic skill across the web.
Google Translate's excellent.
That's impossible.
All right, Will, what's Chirp?
Well, I'm not saying that the end of the world is nigh, but you might want to buy yourself a two-way radio. And if you do buy yourself a two-way radio, you would do well to buy something cheap and cheerful like a Baofeng 888, which is a very cheap, very easily available, very reliable radio, which has got some really cool features in it, like channel selection and encryption and stuff like that. But you can't really turn it on through the sort of two knobs that you get on the top. So Chirp is a old bit of software, really. In fact, it relies on Python 2, so that's quite how old it is. But it will let you upload a channel mapping for the sort of 12 channels that the radio supports. It'll let you set the frequencies, turn the features on, like encryption and things. Well, I say encryption. It's not encryption, but it's good enough. It will let you do all of this stuff and then store it into the radio, and then you can set up multiple ones of these, plug your radio into your laptop using a USB to two 3.5mm jack plugs, cable that, again, is very easily obtainable. You could probably build your own one if you've got an old pair of headphones, and upload it to the radio. So it's a really handy bit of software for maintaining complicated frequency mappings in a nice, easy to use format. And it's open source. And if you download it now, when the end of days comes, then you'll already have it handy.
This is one of these things where the software is really cheap and easy and brilliant, and then the radio is like £5,000.
You can get a Baofeng 888, which only works in the PMR range, so 400 and something megahertz, which is like good old business walkie-talkie frequency. But there, you can pick those up for probably about 10 to 15 quid, brand new.
Really? Yeah. Okay. I'll take that back then.
And they've got, well, I don't know what the power is. It's probably limited to a watt or something like that, but that'll get you a mile or two, I would think.
Can you actually transmit on that legally?
Yes, absolutely legally, no license required. And there are repeaters set up, or there used to be. I don't know if they are so much anymore, but you could set up a repeater which would then allow you to, either go onto the internet and back out again, or just extend your range.
I was going to be mocking you about how waterproof your anorak is, and now I'm actually secretly interested. Damn it.
Have you been prepping, Will?
A little bit. I've got some bottled water in, and and some radios.
And some rancid beet in some home tinned.
Have you been doing extra brews, Graham, just in case?
Good idea, but no.
Get on it while you still can. All right, well, my first discovery sounds a bit like what you imagined the radio one would be, Phelan, because this is Open Kaleidoscope. It's this cool synthesizer thing. This should be Graham's. I don't know why I'm doing it, but...
Can we fade you out with a reverb as well?
Yeah. But it seems to be open source. You can get all the CAD files to build the thing, and the software for it's open source as well. But I didn't even look at how expensive it would be to buy all the gear to do it, because I'm assuming it's too much. But there's a cool video that I'll link to showing it in action, and it kind of like it's a sampler synth type thing. Graham, you'd probably know more about it than I would.
I haven't heard of it. It looks really cool, but it says it's a granular synthesizer.
That's it, yeah.
Yeah, they're very interesting. So, like a sample of audio is a waveform, and there are individual samples in that. And a granular synthesizer basically takes a small adjustable window of those samples and turns that into what it calls a cloud. And you can kind of adjust playback through that little cloud and then grab other little clouds from the same sample. So it captures different parts of the real sound's kind of feeling. It's a really interesting kind of synthesis. Actually, it's not like analog at all. It's a new cool thing. There's a really great open source granular synth, and this is open source as well, but one with a GUI called Borderlands, if people are interested.
Yeah, you should check this out and maybe build one if you can be bothered and can afford it, and let us know. All right, well, we teased this at the end of the last episode. Graham, Vim Wiki.
Yeah, so I don't want this to be like an Arch thing, but I use.
Do you?
I've used Vim for a long time, Vim, the text editor. I use other editors as well, but it's because I like learning things while I'm writing, and Vim, there's always something to learn while you're doing something else, and I like that part of it.
Like how to quit.
The keyboard commands to Vim, once you've learnt them, they're used everywhere, and it's really useful. And I really enjoy using Vim. I think it's a brilliant piece of software. There's lots of different plugin systems, and I use quite a few of those plugins. And one of them is called this. It's Vim Wiki, although you can use it standalone. And I guess I've never really been able to get my head around Emacs and Org mode. I'm sorry, I need to try it, but it sounds to me like Vim Wiki is the closest Vim gets to having an Org mode. It basically lets you quickly switch into a mode where you can make your own notes in either MediaWiki format or Markdown, and then quickly kind of mark it up, turn them into to-do lists. You press return on a word and it turns into a brand new page, and you can link between pages really quickly using Vim shortcuts to like indent headers, and add lists, mark checklists off. And I use it to kind of log the stuff that I'm doing and make notes, and automatically sync everything over Git to a private Git repo. And the output as HTML, if you want to publish it and you want it to be the kind of publishing side of a static blog, for example, it's really good for that kind of thing. It's really powerful, but honestly, it's simple. If you already know how to navigate around Vim, it's not that hard. I know it's a bit weird.
If you've already achieved some sort of immortality, then yeah, this is easy.
But all the files kind of exist in a Vim Wiki folder in your home folder or wherever you want to configure it, and you can access them anywhere. There's no secret format. It all kind of creates a text database for you, but all of the data is contained within those text files. There's nothing magic about it, and helps you navigate them and quickly create your own kind of whatever you want, diary, note system, to-do list, work log. I use it for all those kind of things and take it with me wherever I go. I sync it with my Git repo whenever I sync all my config files to a new machine or instance. I really like it, and it works really well with Vim because I usually have Vim open.
I've got to say, it does look really good, and there is something about a nicely done CLI app that it can look really nice, clean, concise, and clear. And I've sort of half done this where I've got half my text-based stuff in Markdown and the other half in restructured text and the other in some hobnail text files. And I need to standardize them all and make them look pretty and nice, because most of it is just a dump from like much higher level tools, from exports from like LibreOffice files and things like that. And it's just horrible. It's one of those things. So I need a to-do list to tell me to do one.
Yeah. And it doesn't add any overhead. You don't have to, you have to install it on Vim, but after that, you can still access the files. It doesn't matter that it's been created using VimWiki.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Even if you don't have the markup, you can still look at the file and like it's sensible. I really like that.
That's the main thing for me. Yeah, because I access it in lots of different ways, and of course you can output the HTML really easily if you need to. And that's my find. I haven't got a synth one. I keep trying to hold it off, and now Joe's gone and done one this week.
Contagion.
Okay, this episode is sponsored by Linode. Go to linode.com/late-night-linux to get started with $100 free credit. From their award-winning support offered 24/7 365 to every level of user, to ease of use and setup, it's clear why developers have been trusting Linode for projects both big and small since 2003. Deploy your entire application stack with Linode's one-click app marketplace, or build it all from scratch and manage everything yourself with supported centralized tools like Terraform. Linode offers great price-to-performance value for all compute instances, including GPUs, as well as block storage, Kubernetes, and more. Linode makes cloud computing fast, simple, and affordable, allowing you to focus on your projects, not your infrastructure. So go to linode.com/late-night-linux, create a free account with your Google or GitHub account or your email address, and you'll get $100 in credit. That's linode.com/late-night-linux. Computers are really fast but less exciting now. I found an article on the Register about the new Apple M1 Ultra Mac Studio, which is just this ridiculously fast machine that's in this tiny box. And Rupert Goodwins, who wrote this article, talks about ASCII White, which was IBM's supercomputer from 2001. At the time, it was the fastest supercomputer. And now this little box for a couple of grand is faster than that $170 million supercomputer from just over 20 years ago. That is somewhat debatable. I don't know if we want to get into that. But what he goes on to talk about in this article is that as computers have become more and more powerful, they've been kind of abstracted away and they've become less interesting. And he says, what the personal supercomputer has become is a divinely powerful construction set for ideas in any medium, technical or artistic, but only for the skilled and experienced. You have to push it. Golden Age IT pulled you along behind it if you just had the wit to hold on. And I thought, this seems really on brand for you lot. Presumably you agree with quite a lot of what he says in this article.
Well, I spent most of the day trying to figure out if it really is that quick, because I'm still like salty about the fact that Mac thinks they've got this powerful processor, which irks me so much that I think it's like, it couldn't be that good. Couldn't be.
Yeah, I know what you mean. When the first numbers came out about the M1 chips, I was like, they're fudging the numbers. It's fine. And now, having spoken to people who've got one on their desk and who say they're compiling software in, half the time it used to take on this massive 6-core Intel thing, I think that actually I'm coming to the realization that it is that good.
I'm still not convinced. Also, ASCII White had 6 terabytes of RAM, and you can only get 64 or 128 on the Mac. And how many miners are using the Mac? That's what I'd like to know. So clearly it's not that good, is it?
I read this article, and Joe's right. It did sort of resonate with me at a very personal level. My feeling is that computers were probably fast enough about 5 years ago, and phones were probably fast enough about 3 years ago. And everything since then has just been marketing spin. And I feel that we're all now such cynical bastards that we've seen all this old stuff being rehashed as modern technology, from everything from toilet cleaner to fridges, that everything's got this new smart technology and this technology and that technology, and it's not. And when you actually try and advertise something as being new technology and better and faster, I just look at it and think, yeah, you're probably lying to me. And so I've sort of discounted a lot of the increase in performance and decrease in cost, and especially decrease in power consumption over the last few years, because I've just dismissed it as being bullshit. It seems that it wasn't.
I think if you take, say, the PlayStation, you know the way the PlayStation 1 and 2 were fairly bog standard consoles, and then they went mad and used that cell processor on the PlayStation 3. But the only problem was that no developer really got the handle of it. I mean, developers might be countering me saying, no, we did, just shut up. But it looked like they never really, it was so complex to use and so powerful that nothing really quite pushed the limit of that hardware, because it was so complicated to use and the tools weren't quite up to scratch that nothing ever properly used that system.
I think they did in the end.
Yeah, maybe at the very end, yeah.
I think one of the problems was that games developers didn't want to do, they develop a game for 3 different platforms or 4, and so they didn't want to do a load of unique stuff just for the PlayStation. I think that's where Sony shot themselves in the foot there, which they kind of corrected later on. My feelings are like, and this is why I didn't want to be like an old man raging at the cloud, but, when I was a kid, it took ages for a new piece of technology to come out, and you would consume every single kind of bite of its capacity in trying to learn more about it. And I've basically, since the 90s, got this huge to-do list of things that technology has now potentially enabled me to do. But because of the rate of development, I'm so hooked on new technology coming, I've never gone back and done all the things I really wanted to do in the 80s, which new technology would now really easily enable me to do. And I think it's a bit like TikTok and attention span. We have a very short attention span for what new technology offers in terms of fulfilling its potential. And I think about this in terms of we're slaves to it. I think we mentioned this a couple of episodes ago, but games probably take now longer to load than they did in the 80s off a cassette, because they often need an update when you load them, and you often have to download 100 gigabytes just to play something. Really, it's taking 10 or 20 minutes if you haven't turned your computer on for 2 weeks. And it's the same with phones, amazingly powerful, but you have to plug them in every single day. Same with your watch if you've got a smartwatch. We have all this great technology with incredible potential performance, but we're using it sometimes in a wrong way that we haven't properly utilised to improve the quality of our lives as we did have them. And I do think there needs to be a kind of recalibration of that.
Can I counter all of your old man naysaying here with things like the Raspberry Pi? What you've got there is nowhere near as powerful as the most powerful computers you can buy now, but they are powerful enough and accessible enough and open enough to be able to do the type of stuff that you're talking about. And they're so cheap in relative terms that you can have a load of them. Like, Will, you've got some running like your thermostats on your radiators and stuff. That's the byproduct of this, surely, that because we've advanced so far in terms of like the mainstream technology, going and buying Macs, or even the Intel and AMD stuff is massively powerful compared to what we once had. But the lower end stuff that's dirt cheap is accessible still. And if you want to get deep and dirty with it, you can. But most people don't want to. And I think that most people never wanted to. They just wanted appliances that worked. And they mostly just watched the telly because you flipped it on, changed channels, and it just worked. Then smartphones came along, and that's what most people wanted. They wanted just a jab screen interface that just loaded up Facebook, gave them their terrible conspiracy theories, and they were happy.
Yeah, but look where we stand now, right? Where I know my TV is on its last legs. It's a 32-inch LCD from, I don't know, late 2000s. It's going to die, but I don't want to buy a smart TV because I don't need to have a force upgrade cycle based on them not updating the OS to my TV at some point. I just want a dumb screen, but I can't get that because they've shoehorned all this intelligence, in inverted commas, into the device to make it obsolete quicker than it should be.
Just never connect it to the network and use it as a dumb TV.
Yeah, but I don't even believe that is possible, because it'll probably go sniffing out all sorts of free networks when you don't want to, unless I chisel the fucking aerial off the side of the board. Either that or I wrap the entire room in tinfoil. Okay.
Like your head.
Yes.
Just give the telly its own tinfoil aesthetic. It'll look really cool and futuristic.
You take the piss out of me of that, but there is the package that we've seen from them a few years ago where they're screenshotting what people are watching. I mean, there is no TV discount you can give me that can allow you to take a snapshot of what I'm doing in my life and my personal time.
Yeah, but come on, that's people connecting it to the internet.
I know, but that thing should not exist. Nobody should be allowed to get that amount of info from their users, whether it be, agreed to or not, if, click the shiny button. But not all technology is good.
There was another aspect to this article that I thought was especially interesting. It talks about Gen X growing up alongside Moore's law. And I think that that's a very interesting thing, that our generation started out with very early microcomputers, very early home computers, I should say. And then throughout our lives, computers have just got faster and faster and cheaper. And we don't really know any difference. And I think that people who were born in, the last 20 years, let's say, have always had computers which have been pretty powerful. And yes, the number of polygons per second has increased, but generally speaking, the sort of use of computers, it hasn't changed a great deal. You browse the web and, watch movies or whatever. It hasn't changed substantially. And so, as Joe was saying, you use the computer in a different way. You've never had to write your own widget set or your own window manager or your own graphics library, because it's always been there and it's always worked and it's always been better than something you could do yourself. And so I do think that we are sort of blessed in a way that we experienced all this stuff firsthand, and it did drag us along and it did give us all well-paid jobs and a reliable income. And we're very, very lucky to have experienced that. And I think, well, I know, because I feel sorry for my kids, that they do not show that same interest in the inner workings of the computer, because it's just a box. It's just a box that they press buttons and it does things. And I think that they're missing out, but they think otherwise.
I think, though, you can't understand most modern systems, so unless it is something as low, like a microbit, like the BBC brought out, because it's a PhD level knowledge that you require to understand how a processor works these days.
Well, there's levels of abstraction, right? And I don't think many people have ever really fully understood all the layers of that abstraction. It's just that there are more layers now.
I don't know. I think back in Commodore 64 days, they did, because people were writing machine code to make sprites load quicker by God knows what.
Yeah, but I think that was esoteric even back then. But the point does stand that there are more layers of that abstraction now.
Yeah, which may stop people wanting to understand it or challenge themselves to understand it. I don't know. I haven't got any evidence for that. But it is difficult to know where to start. I mean, how many times have you corrected someone when they've said the internet's down and you say, no, it's just the Wi-Fi that's down. The internet is something different.
Yeah, or people referring to the web as the internet.
Yeah, and Linux as GNU/Linux.
Or kids not having an understanding of what a router is and what a wireless access point is.
Yeah.
And they wouldn't say that the internet's down. They'd say the Wi-Fi is down. Like they consider Wi-Fi to be the internet. They don't even know what an Ethernet cable is, most of them.
Right, the Wi-Fi access point is no different to the washing machine.
What? What?
It's just a thing, right? It serves a purpose. Its entire existence is to, one, wash your clothes, or two, serve the internet up. It doesn't matter anything about what's inside it or how it works. It's irrelevant.
I retract my guffaws. I apologise.
No, I think you're right. It's become normalised.
Yeah.
It's funny you mention washing machines, right? Because the handle on my washing machine slowly broke over the last sort of 6 months. And I would imagine that a lot of people would just get a new washing machine. But I ordered the part, opened it up, fucked around for about an hour, and now it's perfectly fine again. And that part I could have 3D printed, it turns out, if I had one. And it cost me, it was like 20 quid or something for a bit of plastic. But anyway, it saved me not only the few £100 of a new washing machine, but also the hassle of fucking lifting it in and out and all that. But I wonder if kids who grow up with just touchscreen interfaces and not having any understanding of how any of that works would even be of that mindset. And is that not just how society has progressed generally? That people don't think to fix things, make do and mend and all that? Have we just had the good times for too long?
I think you're right. Part of it is that people are just not interested in it because everything else is so convenient. And also that's what the capitalist pigs want you to do. They want you to buy a new washing machine. But I do have some hope that things are not going to go entirely that way, because you've got quite a substantial swell in the number of makers. And there's that famous legal situation where people wanted to fix their tractors or something, and they won the right to repair. So I do think that people care about it, but it is a shrinking minority, I think.
And it's not just tech, because my waste pipe leaked on my bath and I had to replace the entire overflow, U-bend and the lot because they don't sell the rubber washers anymore. A 5p piece of rubber washer you cannot buy separately. So there you go.
You didn't use enough gaffer tape.
I do wonder whether it is getting rarer for kids and young people to get into understanding how things work. Because I'm sure that a lot of people who listen to this show will have encouraged their kids down that path rather than just sitting them in front of the telly or the Xbox or whatever. But when we/you lot were kids, you sort of didn't really have any alternative with computers and IT stuff. You sort of had to learn how it all works. Whereas now you just don't have to. It's all progressed so far that the internal workings of it are largely irrelevant unless you go out of your way to make them relevant. And I know that the government has tried to mandate coding and stuff. I don't know how well that's gone. I don't suppose very well. But do we really have fewer people interested now as a result of that? I don't know. I'd love to see data on it.
Well, I only have anecdotal data from one of my children who's old enough to know about these sorts of things. And he has no interest in software development, coding, or anything like that. He just wants to play games. No interest in how the computer fits together, like what the various components are. And maybe that's just my kid, but I don't know. I think that's quite reflective of society.
Well, so he's not interested in even like getting the latest drivers or whatever. He just wants an appliance.
Yeah. What he wants probably is a console, but I know better. So he doesn't get that choice.
Right.
Well, my wee fella has asked me, he wants a game development thing, a bit like Unity, and he thinks he's going to be able to write his own game in it. And let me just preface this by he's like 7.5, and I am now frantically trying to find some sort of tool that could be both fun to do with a bit of work, but also manageable. Because let's face it, I'm going to have to do the thing at the end. And I've looked at things like Godot or whatever, and yeah, I have no idea. So if anybody has any great ideas for a easy to use game development tool, please send them my way.
Scratch?
Can you do games in Scratch?
Very basic ones.
Can you? Maybe.
It's got collision detection on that.
It's not going to cut the mustard. He wants to do a 3D first-person shooter, let's face it.
Okay, all right. No, yeah. I think that's unrealistic then.
It's unrealistic, but I'll be doing most of the work.
Yeah. Well, that's a good sign, though, that he's at least interested, even if his expectations are not very realistic.
I'm pretty sure it's because he saw something on YouTube.
Well, do let us know what you think about this, dear listener. Have computers become less exciting as they've got faster, or are we just old men? I suppose they can both be true, can't they? Oh, well. Right, well, we'd better get out of here then. We'll be back next week when we'll probably be talking about what's been going on in the Linux and open source news. But until then, I've been Joe.
I've been Phelan.
I've been Graham.
And I've been Will.
See you later.